Okay. I hope to God that it works out this time. Come on. Call the Facebook person. Please. Come on. Still frozen on that face. See if I can get out of Messenger and get back into it. Come on. Come the It's like this so often. I just don't understand. I just don't. I don't understand. Please. I'm begging you, Facebook. I'm begging. Please. Would you please, come on. Come on. Get me back on Messenger. Please. Come on. And that is it's getting fucked with. Okay, missed call. Okay, let's try it one more time. Just the recording, maybe. Hello? Oh, cool. You got video too. Alright. Hey, I got a question for you. Real simple question. Just want to start the whole conversation out with this one question. What do you think of the combination of Delta 9 THC with DXM, in your opinion? Come on, man. Fuck. Facebook. Fucking fuck, dude. Maybe this. Okay, I think we got things going good now this time. What? I have one specific question for you just to start the whole conversation off. No, not this again. Not this again. Come here, please, please. That's not good. That is not good. I don't like that at all. Okay, just try to work with me, DMT Infinity. I'm gonna try to get this podcast in the best possible way. Oh, okay, yes, all right, perfect, cool. I have a question. What do you think of the combination of DXM with Delta 9 THC? How do you think they synergize? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? No internet connection. A fuck. Holy
One eternity later.
Okay, there we go. Now it's recording.
We can begin whenever you want. And until then, I'm going to load up some tobacco.
All right. With me, I got turmeric extract and milk thistle extract. Plan on taking. And I'd have to say that turmeric and milk thistle are like two of the top 3 health supplements I'd recommend the most. I would say ginkgo biloba as well. Also, one of the most medicinal herbal supplements that you can find, especially with it just being leaf powder. The ginkgo biloba, you just eat the leaves. In fact, it seems to work more effective that way, according to what I was told. Somebody told me he was actually chewing on the ginkgo biloba leaves, and it had more of an effect than him just taking the health supplement over the counter for some weird reason. Imagine that, like concentrated, not the leaf powder, not the
I was about to say, speaking of leaf powder, I got a whole damn collection here.
That is for the simple reason, it being a DXM potentiator, an herbal thing I will consider, but I think the opiate-like properties actually take away from the psychedelic effects of specifically the the nutmeg metabolite, the MDA, aka the 3-methoxy-4,5-methylene dioxyamphetamine.
See, I mean, I think it depends on the dose, but I think that may sort of kind of be like that as well until you start consuming about 10 to 20 grams of it at a time. And then by that point, the psychoactive effects are like really, really fucking strong, especially if you're meditating or something.
Well, here's the thing. For some reason, opiates don't seem to synergize with classic hallucinogens as effectively as they seem to with dissociatives for some weird reason. It almost makes me think like, maybe somehow from it being mute opioid receptor activator that it may also be an MDA antagonist like DXM or DXO.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some sort of scientific reason as to why, but I think that it may go just as deep as well on some sort of like spiritual level where there's something about psychedelics and the spirits inside of it that don't really, like the word that you're using, they don't really synergize with those particular chemicals because they just don't match up. I don't really know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but if you take cannabis and ayahuasca, for example, they seem to be like best friends. Whereas if you were to consume ayahuasca and alcohol at the same time, it's just not a pretty sight.
Oh yeah, I figure since you're already going through the purge, dude, fuck that. And I mean, if it's me saying fuck that, then it's gotta it's gotta.
It's like if the substance combination king says fuck that, fuck that.
I'll be right back. Just 1 second.
One eternity later.
I've wondered about sorcery being outside of just substances. Like, what if you were just to use some sort of idol for attracting spirits? What exactly determines that?
Well, I think that something like that certainly exists. There are people like shamans and witch doctors that do say that sort of stuff works, and they pretty much dedicate most of their life to this sort of like actually doing that. And it's kind of weird because like whenever you are around them and the way that they're doing it and what they're doing and the results that they get, it's pretty undeniable that they're doing something. It may not be something supernatural, but they're doing something that works.
And I mean, like, what does supernatural even technically really mean? Black peppercorns, where you don't even have to go through the whole process, just extracting that piper in, and you don't even have to chew it up and not enjoy the taste, as you will not, but you can just swallow peppercorns, and it seems to, when used consistently over a period of time, make your endocannabinoids more active from one particular component that I talk about in my videos. And you may know what I'm talking about. You may.
I think you've written down a lot about it in your journal.
I wrote down all kinds of shit. Like, I swear, people they tell me it isn't just my pretentious fan base. Like, it's just people in general, I guess, that they say, and if my fan base is watching this, right, it's okay that you come at me like sort of pretentious. I mean, you guys aren't stupid, of course. You guys have some understanding of science.
Well, I think that
really.
the best part of having a highly educated fan base is the fact that even if there are things that you don't know, you can learn a lot from them just like they can learn a lot from you. And it is a sharing of that sort of information that makes the entire community even smarter. So it's okay to be dumb because once you get the correct information, then you can go on from there and keep going deeper into it.
And there was this one commenter that told me, no, dude, the growing hair back thing, like, that never happened. when it's like, you know, it makes it so hard to impress these people. They're so already intelligent in their own mind that you got to really try to impress them. They got to be like, shit, this guy may actually know what he's talking about. But maybe if you ride the thin line between knowing what he's talking about and not, then that kind of draws me in more, so to speak. Since it's more interactive that way, that them trying to feel as though they're included, you know, not just being told what to do, like they have a role to play. They're there to more or less correct me for the most part, which I completely understand it. Um, you know, I have to admit whenever I'm wrong about anything, because otherwise I would just, you know,
Yeah, there was
I would just be
actually
like,
a one point where, I mean, I wasn't saying it correctly. I was just trying to give an example, but there was a point during my live streams where I kept saying that, dude, like not all drugs are the same. Like even like cannabis is a drug, water is a drug, and my moderator kept trying to explain to me, no man, H2O is not a drug. So I had to like fully look it up and be like, oh yeah, because it doesn't actually do anything to your brain chemistry. So then I was like, well shit, well I learned that. So then I had to make my example even better. Heroin is a drug and sugar's a drug.
right,
There are good drugs and there are bad drugs. The only reason why people have a misconception whenever it comes to drugs is because we don't have an intellectual way of talking about different mind-altering substances and the way that they affect the mind and body. Because the fact of the matter is that heroin is a drug and DMT is a drug, but they do completely different things. One is healthy and one is not.
yeah, I just like to go with the term substance, not even drug specifically. But I just like to refer to them as substances and look at it from an unbiased perspective, taking out of consideration the fact that you get substances. Just what exactly do we mean when we say high? There's
An,
so much more that goes into it. We
an
don't
altered
even
state
know.
of consciousness that isn't that that isn't like your baseline of consciousness whenever you're completely sober. Though, I mean, granted, technically we're tripping all the time because we constantly have different chemical reactions going off in the brain from dopamine to serotonin to oxytocin. And record. Day
Awesome.
2, take 420.
Yeah, no, for real. Yeah, it's been so many times that we try to make this work, and it was actually the best of all the recorded podcasts, hands down. The podcast that we did do that ended up messing up the way that it did, but we talked about something very, very interesting, which was the combination of DXM with THC. Just so you know, I'm not talking about any other form of THC other than THC that you know of that gets you high from the cannabis. That, yeah, there was some sort of a comment you were asking about what type of THC, like you didn't know there was a Delta 9 THC or something, but
Yeah, during one of my live streams, my live Q&A series, one of my fans had brought that up, but I don't know anything about Delta 9 THC. The only research that I've done into it is what they were telling me.
well, I can tell you this much. You'll actually be way better off using the cannabis bud versus the concentrated THC that I'm sure is going to be enjoyable in its own way, but it's just not the same without the terpenes that's naturally occurring in cannabis plants.
Yeah, man, I'm just so old-fashioned whenever it comes to cannabis. I mean, give me a bong and some good weed and I'm good to go.
And see, the reason why it's like that is because the other components of cannabis, the terpenes, like myrcene, for example, it seems um, it seems to actually interact with the endocannabinoid system, and that's like a whole different area right there that I wanted to get into also, where you basically have your naturally occurring forms of THC, the anandamide endocannabinoid as well as the 2-arachidonoglycerol.
Yeah, see, I don't know all those big words, man.
Oh, well, look, dude. I know I make myself seem like it's real too complex for anyone else to even understand, like, what kind of a level I'm on.
Well, you're
like,
very passionate about the topic. Therefore,
Yeah.
you've done a lot of research into it, and you're very educated on that topic. So you are pretty much one of the primary people that I would personally go to if I have any questions on this particular type of topic on.
Yes. There's a lot of stuff that I do know, but whenever I act like I'm the legit source of knowledge, and my commenters see that, if they're like trying to correct me, which is technically their job as an audience for a self-harm reduction channel, is to correct me if I'm making any sort of mistake, because it's not about how I look, it's about the message at hand. But anyway, like, if they're seeing me over here like thinking I'm the source of all legit knowledge, there's only so much that anybody can know, you know? We all are limited in knowledge in some form or fashion. There's stuff that I can learn from people that I didn't even know about that could be considered just as knowledgeable as the stuff found in my research that I talk about. You know, I don't want to put myself up as though I'm just an egotistical, narcissistic type, but at the same time, if you don't take yourself enough seriously,
If you take yourself too seriously, then you'll come off as a fool. But if you take yourself seriously enough, then you're just a teacher.
yeah, the thing is, if you didn't have confidence in how knowledgeable you were, then you, I mean, people just wouldn't take you seriously. Because, I mean, if you don't think you're any legitimate source of knowledge, then how do you expect anyone else to believe that?
Yeah, and see, that is one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand about DMT Infinity. I'm I'm a teacher to some degree, but I'm an artist. I don't just make videos about psychedelics. I do everything from let's plays to tutorials to short films to animation skits to live streams to vlogs. I try to bring all of the genres of YouTube together into one single YouTube channel. So even though that my channel is called DMT Infinity, I'm not primarily just some dude who talks about psychedelics. It is a passion of mine, but that isn't the only thing that I do. And I know that there are a lot of YouTubers that stick to just like one or two genres, but I'm just not into that. Ever since I first started YouTube, whenever I was 12 years old, I just like doing what I love. And if I want to do something, I'll do it. It doesn't matter if it fits within the normal video types that I've made up to that point. I just like doing shit that I'm passionate about.
See, I find it real interesting how I'm able to remember certain specific things, but not as well other things. Sometimes my ability to absorb information just have this barrier in front of it. In fact, I would even consider myself attention deficit, which basically has to do with dopamine deficiency in some region of your brain. And that's why they have to put people on stimulants that directly release dopamine, because otherwise you just don't have that improvement in short-term memory, because that's just like the only way that you can actually fix it with that quick fix that, say, a substance like propylhexatrin would provide. A very useful legal over-the-counter stimulant. In fact, you could probably stock up on that kind of stuff.
But wouldn't cannabis just be a good replacement for that?
Oh, you know what? You're right about this much. THC is actually used to treat attention deficit disorder as well. And it definitely has its place as an ADD medication, but for some reason, a lot of people think it doesn't help people with ADD. In fact, it would do the opposite, is what a lot of people believe, just because they don't understand um, that substances don't affect all people the same way. How a substance like THC would affect somebody with attention deficit disorder, there would actually be improvement in short-term memory from using THC. Notable improvement, even though THC technically causes memory impairment.
Well, I don't like that argument because a lot of people think that stoners are always forgetting shit. And to some degree, they do, but they're losing their train of thought. But if they have a good reference point to what they were talking about, they can remember exactly what they were talking about because there's so much going on inside of their head that most of it is getting stored to the subconscious, but it's still there. It doesn't go away.
Compared to any other substance besides the stimulants that directly release dopamine release the way that they do. In other words, I'm just going to say it has to be in the same league as something like methamphetamine or amphetamine, to last all day, the necessary dopamine release in order for the short-term memory to be improved without any sort of memory impairment, as long as you are caught up on sleep. As long as you're caught up on sleep, and it's actually very doable. You don't have that type of memory impairment that you find with THC. But you hear about people like making these stereotypes about meth heads, like they're just mindless zombies or some shit. Like there's just no way that like they have their head together in any sort of way after taking what's a stimulant.
I don't think that that is the problem with methamphetamine. I've known enough meth heads to know that it's a pretty fucked up drug, and I've seen meth take some of the most purest, most beautiful souls I've ever met and turn them into absolute monsters.
It's connected to a realm that Benadryl is too. It's not the same, but it brings about the shadow people, the demons, gets you closer to that kind of realm than even some of the strongest psychedelics. It can because it's not really manifesting the mind when you get into that state of delirium the way that you do. It's just straight up psychosis. It can, of course, it can cause psychosis, drug-induced psychosis. That could possibly even be permanent. Some people develop schizophrenia not until like age 25 or something for some reason, just because their genetics change a little bit. It's weird how that works.
I think that every human being is at least a little schizophrenic, some people more than others, but I don't think that schizophrenia is fully understood. I myself am a schizophrenic, but I'm what's called a process schizophrenic.
Oh, okay, that's interesting because in one of my podcasts, I asked Dexman if he was possibly schizophrenic, and he told me he wasn't. Of course, he put himself in states of schizophrenia, but I guess if it's self-induced, it's not technically considered schizophrenia in the same regard.
In the traditional sense.
Yeah, since it, for some reason, with these schizophrenics, it's just a permanent like thing that stays that way. The schizophrenia, it doesn't.
Well, if you think about it, shamans are schizophrenics, but the thing that separates them from most other schizophrenics is the fact that they can go into those realms and then come back into what we call normal reality and actually render it all into coherent vocabulary or art or something else. They are in tune with those worlds, but they're not completely fucking bananas.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about schizophrenia, it's treatable, but to say it's curable would be understanding.
I would never want to be cured of, quote unquote, cured of my schizophrenia. I couldn't see my life not being schizophrenic.
Oh yeah, I mean there's people that get it at such a young age. It's like they just always known that their mind is always going to be that way. Yeah, I mean, it's treatable to an extent. They find that with schizophrenics, they tend to have too much dopamine release. And they've found that in certain cases of schizophrenia, if they antagonize the D2 dopamine receptor, then that specific dopamine receptor seems to regulate schizophrenia for some reason. So we got one little factor that's, in the mix. But for people to have just the schizophrenia gene just like pop up the way that it does, makes you wonder like what would start triggering your brain to start releasing more dopamine and just change the complete neurological makeup the way that it was originally like, just because your mind like basically mixes with substances a certain way in which, yeah, it gets deep. It gets really fucking deep.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody reacts to being schizophrenic differently. Like, you have some people who have such uncontrollable delusions that they can't even live a normal life. So they're usually put into fucking crazy houses. But if these exact same people were in an Aboriginal or traditional society where they have shamans, then they would be taken under the wings of shamans, and they would be given the option to actually undergo shamanic rituals that involve ayahuasca, so that they could actually, what's the word that I'm looking for? So they could actually control, for lack of a better term, their schizophrenia, and no longer be in the state of delusion where they are going completely fucking psychotic, but instead they could actually do something with it to help their society, and they could make art, and they could provide groundbreaking ideas or give groundbreaking ideas to their society to transform it.
Well, yeah, of course they're by no means under the same classification as mentally retarded. In fact, a lot of geniuses seem to be schizophrenic. It's basically a much more active mind, even though it seems to fry your brain from having it in overdrive mode for so much of the time. And it seems like, and this is why I think that in a lot of cases, schizophrenia, it seems like it synergizes well with the DXM chemical in particular, because I know when I was putting myself in a state of psychosis, drug-induced psychosis, mind you, and I did it so many times, I was thinking, I'm just going to have schizophrenia. I never do. I never fucking do. But anyway, when I was putting myself in the state of psychosis, it's Benadryl. The DXM did a tremendous job of taking away the fear aspect. I would recommend it to people to mix with psychedelics just to take away the fear aspect that would be associated more so with your classic hallucinogen
So
psychedelic.
is DXM a psychedelic, or is it just a psychoactive compound?
Oh, it's technically a psychedelic. I mean, if you want to look at how psychedelics are defined, it's from how they interact with that area of your brain that filters perception. There's like a connection that's made to your prefrontal cortex, and that gets inhibited. So you don't filter your perception as much, and you have perceptions that mix into other perceptions. So it's cross-sensory perception, including enhancement of perception. I mean, why else wouldn't, why else would they call it psychedelic after all? Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And I think that that is one of the biggest things that comes with schizophrenics in general. I think that schizophrenia only becomes a hindrance to the person whenever they cannot differentiate different realities. But whenever they're able to tap into other realities and then bring that back into this reality, then that is whenever it can actually become a tool for personal, spiritual, or social transformation.
Yeah, and see, schizophrenics, they're also more connected to, besides delirium, of course, which is, I think, a different type of schizophrenia. You know, I mean, there's schizophrenics that can separate the two realities. They're aware
Exactly.
what are the hallucinations, just like they would be able to, let's say, if they were to take LSD and they know that they're tripping the whole time. It's just a trip. It's just a mind trip. Nothing can hurt them. But no matter how strong-minded you are, Benadryl, if it's just taken by itself, it's going to get you every single time. That fear aspect, it's just going to get you every single time. And that's why I say DXM does such a tremendous job of treating anxiety and fear that's brought about by certain trips using certain specific, more stimulant-like psychedelics, the type of psychedelics that would excite a certain part of your brain that could be associated with fear. But with the dextromethorphan chemical, somehow from its physically depressing qualities that's specific to NMDA antagonist dissociatives, it takes away that fear aspect. But it also does the same particular type of psychedelia, which would be categorized as dissociation, as salvia. And salvia seems
Salvia
to
is fucking crazy, man.
always puts people in such a fearful state of mind. I mean, don't get me wrong, people can do that with even just your regular dissociatives that actually get you euphoria. Instead of with salvia, it's just like no euphoria attached to it, but it's, you know,
It can
dab.
be quite a profound experience, though.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's basically just dabbling around in a different reality, a form of reality that I like to call a thought reality, where literally anything imagined is possible with this reality. So when people say you create your own reality in a way, you kind of do. It's like inward, you know. It's like you're getting inside your brain.
Yeah, everything out here is actually in here. Everything out here is a projection of what is in your mind. LSD taught me that a long time ago.
Um, I think that, well, there is a collective consciousness, of course, and there seems to be a lot of reports of how realities are uh, also occurrent with other individuals that
Yeah,
experience.
they're all intertwined.
Yeah, like let's say a person trips with another person and they have a specific hallucination that two of the people there see, but let's say the trip sitter doesn't see what's being seen. Is it not
It is because those two people tripping are in tuned, while their consciousness are both of their consciousnesses are in tune with one another and seeing the exact same thing because they're both in tune into that perspective of reality.
Here's the thing. You technically make it real with how your brain is already set up to begin with. It's almost like we were meant to use our mind that way because of when being younger, that part of the brain that filters perception, that psychedelics, like classic hallucinogens and dissociatives, seem to make a little less active. Like as a kid, your imagination is so active and you're able to imagine things so effectively. You
Your stream is cutting out. I can't hear you. Are you getting enough? Oh, what the hell? I hear music. I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. Call came in just now. Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I want to end the podcast somewhat pretty soon because there was something that I wanted to touch on that would be really important, and there's being you know, preparations made or something, and calls are coming in. So I just thought I'd talk about the combination of DXM with THC. It seems that they find with a certain particular pharmaceutical called L-Diprenol, it extends life expectancy, or has the potential to, on average, for up to 50%, um, for up to 50% longer in rodents on average. And of course, you know, rodents are rodents and humans are humans, but it seems to be from specifically how dopamine hits a certain particular part of the brain responsible for voluntary movement. And this area of the brain is less active in cases of Parkinson's where they have those shakes, you know. And there's videos where they'll smoke a joint and the Parkinson's shakes, they just dissipate. They just go away.
Yep,
And
and in
it's
fact, people who have had seizures, they can treat that with CBD and THC.
yeah, and for some reason, when you mix dopamine releasing substances with these NMDA glutamate antagonists, it actually potentiates the accumulation of dopamine and potentiates the dopamine release associated with it. So that might be accessing what's already put into place, as long as you don't take too much DXM with the THC, but it seems to make the medicinal value for cases of Parkinson's more effective, I would say. But then you get into a point where it just could cause these tremors in such a very, very significant way. Although I don't know if that's just part of being on the DXM trip, you know, or if the THC has just something about it that when it's mixed with DXM, it can cause these
Well, they
very,
seem to potentiate one another's psychoactive effects.
Mhm. Yeah. The dopamine release is potentiated by an NMDA antagonist that actually regulates dopamine release. So it may basically the dopamine that you would release from THC, like it would make it to where it would accumulate more, and it can directly interact with how dopamine gets broken down with MAOB inhibitors. I'm thinking that if it's a potent MAOA inhibitor, it's a lot more likely to be an MAOB inhibitor. I don't know if that's like, you know, always the case, but I know curcumin is known to be a very potent MAOA inhibitor, just like the Syrian rue seeds that they mix in with the ayahuasca brew.
So then you could use that and also use something like Mimosa hostilis, and then the Mimosa hostilis would be, well, the DMT would become orally active?
Yes, I'm saying that. I believe curcumin, based on how it also works as an MAOA inhibitor, it could be just as effective, since it is powerful in its MAOA inhibiting properties, to make the DMT a lot more bioavailable like the Syrian rue seeds would, but possibly also counteract a lot of toxicity in the
I
process.
much prefer the Banisteriopsis capivine. One, because it seems to be a lot more healing, but two, it goes down a lot easier. The Syrian rue seeds taste like fucking shit, man. I cannot handle that taste.
Oh, yeah. See, that's another factor to think about. Just the taste. Maybe it's just the aftertaste that's got you feeling nauseated.
Well, it tastes and smells like grinded down morning glory seeds or something.
You know, that reminds me that morning glory seeds, when ordered through a certain vendor, and it wasn't like what you find in the stores that's got the pesticides on it, it's actually pretty clean from my experience.
Yeah, you can get them all organic.
Yeah, it's actually not that toxic. So that's another thing you could add for your quote unquote sorcery, you know. And a lot of people they want to discredit like what drug users are doing, to access certain states of mind. It's like, I don't think I can technically call it real, but I feel like it's there for a reason, Like, I feel like there's a reason why we're able to access these certain states.
Well, I personally think they are real. I just think that people tend to call things in other realities not real because it's not something that we can physically interact with. But I do, sorry, so something that popped up on my screen. I think that there are an infinite amount of realities and that we literally do live in an infinite multiverse and that three-dimensional space and time is only one of an infinite amount of realities. So whenever our consciousness is altered, we're able to experience one of the other infinite realities or more.
Uh-huh.
So I think that it is all real. It's just not something that I can pick up like this lighter because it's not made of matter.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how matter comes from an absence of matter, like gravity, for example. The pulling force, it just comes from dark matter that doesn't even exist yet before it comes into existence.
Well,
It's
matter
basically,
is energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transformed or transferred.
so
And,
technically,
and whenever a human being dies, the energy is released from their body. It just seems to disappear. So the question is, where does that energy go if it cannot be transformed? I mean, if it cannot be created or transformed? I think what is happening is that whenever you die, that energy, which I also call consciousness, is transcendentalized to a higher state of being. So we go into a higher reality.
yeah, and you know, when you put yourself in this sort of state, you're actually very clear-headed through the experience. I mean, you know what you're experiencing. I mean, there's no way that you're completely out of it, like you would be in a blackout, so to speak. It's like you're not even. It's like you're not even in any sort of impaired state to begin with, but rather the state of mind that forms new realities and then gets that stuff mixed in with the current reality that you're in. And like you said, dark matter can't be created, so there's no origin to it. It all comes from what becomes after, is like where the source is where everything ends to begin creating more of an end, as it is all ending. It's always in forward motion, like you said, since it can't be created. And that makes you wonder, yeah, I mean, well, of course it's infinite. Um, it's just one of those things that makes you really think, like, stuff that technically doesn't even exist is what creates existence. Everything that you can't even, like, you can't even measure it in any sort of physical way, like thoughts, for example. Thoughts not physical, but we consider them real. Um, you know, it's it's getting into the realm of, it's not delirium, right? Because you're actually aware of yourself as you're in the experience, but at the same time, I guess you're not aware of yourself, right? It's almost like maybe you form a form of yourself within that state of dementia. Dimension, not dementia. Um, and you tap into old memories, like from maybe a past life or something. It makes you wonder, like, why are those memories there? Like, maybe these memories are not even true, but we get access to them. Like, wait, I remember something from another life. Why? How? I don't know. That's the question. Where does it all come from? And then it gets back to what you were saying before about how dark matter cannot be created. So it all comes from nothing.
Well, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transformed or transferred.
Yeah, I mean the energy part, that that basically goes into dark energy, which is
Oh, I see.
the pulling force that puts everything into existence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all comes from the end, but it's kind of like that Smashing Pumpkins song title. The end is the beginning is the end. Like,
I've only heard one of their songs. The lead singer has a pretty beautiful voice, man.
yeah, I think that he can hit vocals really good. He's got a very wide range.
Have you ever listened to Tool?
I tried getting into Tool. I really did, and I just for some reason I never really got into it.
They're
Like
not
people,
for everybody, but they are a pretty fascinating band.
okay, I got one more thing actually I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll just end the podcast real quick. I gotta remember. Oh yeah, THC. I've actually proven in my experiments prevents mental decline that induces a state of delirium more effectively than any other substance that I had added into the mix when I was testing out deliriums and how they would induce delirium. Maybe there's like specific forms of delirium, where you trigger the hallucination of the spirals, DPH then, or whatever it is. It's it's quite something. It's almost like it's made that way by design. Like there's a whole system devoted to what THC does specifically because it just works the way it's supposed to. Like we would.
Not related, but still talking about cannabis. I hate the argument whenever people say one of the two things. Cannabis makes people lazy and unproductive, but then you have the other side of the coin where they're like, no, it can actually make you more creative and all of that, blah, blah, blah. I hate both of those arguments because everybody's different. You can be an unproductive stoner that does nothing but sit on the couch, eat junk food, and watch TV all day. But you can also be a productive, artistic, hardworking stoner that eats healthy and works out. Not everybody's the same.
Yeah, and that's another thing that people need to think about whenever they're using THC, because there are people that are actually allergic to THC, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it would make you wonder, like, why is it that it seems to be so medicinal in just the right way when it's not meant for everyone? Like the people that apparently with their allergy endocannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, whenever they smoke THC, they just throw up projectile vomiting. And
do some of those people also black out?
I don't think like they really get the type of effects like that would register. And I feel like it's something, and this is just a guess, but I think it's something outside of the cannabinoid receptor activity, because I feel like they don't even get the psychoactive effects that register, like whenever they get the projectile vomiting that's like telling them, I should not have this in my system.
It's kind of funny because human beings naturally have cannabinoids in their brain.
Yeah, exactly. So of course there's got to be like some kind of measurement you could do to see exactly what's like the right type of activation, but apparently there's just something that's not registering for them. And I could be wrong by saying this, because I don't know if they just don't experience any psychoactive effects when they throw up and it like gets out of their system before it even registers. I feel like, I don't know, there's no high attached to the people that are just allergic to cannabis.
Do you think those same people would react the same way to like edibles or dabs or vaping pure concentrated THC?
What's really weird is that THC is one of the most powerful anti-nausea medications. It does a tremendous job of making it for a lot of people to where you're physically incapable of throwing up because your brain can't register nausea from how it specifically cuts off acetylcholine release. So you can't even register nausea. But apparently, people that are allergic to THC get nauseated from the THC. That's supposed to make it to where they're physically incapable of getting nausea.
Yeah, I mean, that is one reason why I like to smoke weed whenever I drink one too many beers.
Yeah, and DPH is a similar case where it can be very, very powerful, just as powerful as THC for preventing nausea and or vomiting. But for some reason, you take a shit ton of DPH, your body is somehow able to throw it back up, even though it's supposed to cut off the connections to where you're not physically able to throw up. There are some people that actually have that condition where they're physically incapable of throwing up at all. Like the people that don't know what pain is because their body doesn't register pain, apparently, for some reason.
That's terrible. I would hate to be one of those kind of people because even though that pain hurts like a bitch, it's very important.
Yeah, you have to know when you're hurt or too. Like, yeah, you just too hurt. Like, what was I going to tell you? Dang, I gotta think about this.
For any of you who haven't seen it yet and are into Magic the Gathering, then y'all can go over to DMT Infinity or youtube.com/DMT Infinity and check out my Magic the Gathering random unboxing where I unbox these two packs right here. I'm actually very fond of one card in this deck called Peer into the Abyss. It has a stupid ass effect where it causes the target player to draw half of their deck and lose half of their life. Fucking crazy, man. Shameless self-promotion out of the way.
Yeah, okay, I got it now. I was going to talk about how DXM apparently prevents laughter, like some muscle associated with laughter. Interestingly, imagine if you were just physically incapable of laughing.
I guess that kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure if I ever laughed my ass off while under the effects of DXM, but the few experiences that I have had, I do seem to be in a very not depressed state, but a very down kind of mindset where I'm so hyper focused that I'm not emotionally attached to anything.
It's when you get into the state of mind, it's not as emotional of an experience as where classic hallucinogen would be, although you're very in tune with feelings of empathy and understanding emotional intelligence, but it seems like from some sort of disconnect. But
yeah,
okay,
you're not reacting to it, but you can understand it and feel it to some degree.
Yeah, but the reason why I say, DXM can prevent people from laughing is because it's actually given to people that are diagnosed with uncontrollable laughter crying syndrome.
The dude, I mean, Arthur had in the Joker movie?
Exactly, yes. DXM is combined with quinidine to give people that, for that specific reason, the muting of the laugh somehow, I guess it's just specifically DXM that has some correlation with that. But I wonder what other substances would work as effectively, if at all. But yeah, I mean, it's it's new Dexta. It's given to people, and it keeps them from laughing from specifically pseudobulbar effect, but also apparently does that with the laughs created by laughing gas. So apparently there's some connection there. I'm thinking with how nitrous oxide would cause laughter versus pseudobulbar effect. Some correlation there that is interacted the same way with the DXM. And it's just weird.
How old were you whenever you first smoked weed?
18.
I was 12.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna leave for now because I want to check on some things, see how everything, you know, like just send me a link of the podcast download file. And,
Absolutely.
yeah,
All right,
and
everybody. That'll
it's been
be it for this video. I hope that you all enjoyed it. If y'all did, leave it a like, subscribe to PsycheTrippers666, and subscribe to DMT Infinity, and hit that bell notification button. And as always, I'm your host, DMT Infinity, and this is PsycheTrippers666. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.